Revelation 2733. From the 11th of May 1943. Lawfulness. God-ordained order. Perfection. What is visible to man testifies to a certain regularity, but which is taken for granted by him because he does not know it otherwise. The coming into being and passing away of all things can thus already be fathomed in its various phases, that is, man knows about every process, about the development and the course of all things that are visible to him, as soon as he pays attention to them. This regularity therefore makes research easier for people, because they can draw conclusions from it and build their knowledge on it again. But men only penetrate into the laws of nature. They only investigate that it is so, but not why it is as it is. They hold the natural result to be the end or aim of the cause, but they do not know that both the cause and the end of every regularity can only be sought and found spiritually, that spiritual development conditions everything natural in its regularity. And spiritual life also unfolds in a certain regularity, that is, only one will applies in the spiritual kingdom, and according to this will the spiritual activity takes place in the entire universe, in the earthly and in the spiritual kingdom. And since this will is coupled with unsurpassable wisdom, it also has to be constant, that is, it cannot constantly change because that would not be in accordance with God's unsurpassable wisdom. And that is why the constant higher development is also subject to a certain regularity in the spiritual kingdom, and that this is to be understood purely spiritually, that everything takes place in a God-ordained order, and the spiritual kingdom is therefore the epitome of perfection, as soon as the spiritual subordinates itself to this order, thus has made God's will its own. Earthly creation is an idea of God which has become form and which is to introduce the imperfect spiritual into the divine order. It has to go the way through all works of creation, thus it is forced to insert itself into the divine order, because it cannot overturn the lawfulness of nature, just as man as such cannot achieve this either, even if he carries out works of destruction which are a violation of the divine order, of God's will. But he is not able to overturn or abolish natural laws. In the spiritual kingdom, the spiritual can likewise exclude itself from the divine order through its rebelliousness, thus also remaining aloof from God in its own will. But then it will never be perfect, thus it will never be able to belong to the spiritual kingdom, which signifies beatitude and fullest harmony. Because divine will and divine order governs this spiritual kingdom, instead it will separate itself and yet be forced again by divine will to cover a further path of development in a certain regularity until it finally voluntarily joins the divine order after all. The creations of nature on earth give the best proof that everything must perish that rebels against the divine law of nature. The laws of nature are inexorable, and where they are not observed, death and disintegration are usually the result. And that is why the human being also becomes aware that nothing is arbitrary, but that there is a will above everything which expresses itself in every work of creation, that is in its lawfulness, and which must be respected. And that this lawfulness is founded in the deepest wisdom and love of God, because it is, as it were, the precondition for perfection. Amen.